You crawl into a tent tonight. Thin nylon, no locks, no walls, nobody standing guard. Somewhere out there is an animal that could kill you in under 10 seconds, close enough to catch your scent on the wind. It doesn't come. It almost never does. For most of human history, night flipped every advantage to the predator's side. Darkness hid it, silence covered its approach, and you were lying there defenseless. And still, the record shows something almost backwards. Sleeping humans get left alone far more often than they get hunted. That's not luck. That's not because these animals are gentle. It's biology, built over millions of years, and it says more about us than it does about the things we're afraid of. Every large predator on land technically has what it needs to end a sleeping human in seconds. A lion can weigh close to 190 kilograms and close its jaw with enough force to crush bone. A tiger can move through grass without a single sound. Wolves hunt in coordinated packs built for exactly this kind of situation. Something still, something unaware, something with no way to fight back. On paper, a sleeping human is the easiest kill available. Unconscious, unarmed, completely unaware of anything happening 10 feet away. So why doesn't it happen more? Why do campers wake up fine morning after morning in places where large carnivores were actively hunting the same night, sometimes within a few hundred meters? Millions of people sleep outdoors every year across Africa, Asia, and North America, in territory shared with lions, tigers, wolves, and bears, and the overwhelming majority walk away without ever knowing how close they came to something with teeth built for exactly their size. The answer isn't some vague movie logic idea that these animals are simply scared of us. It's something a lot more specific, and a lot stranger once you look at what field research has actually found. In 2023, biologist Liana Zanet from Western University in Canada ran an experiment inside South Africa's Greater Kruger National Park, one of the last places on Earth with a thriving wild lion population. Her team built automated camera and speaker rigs and placed them at 21 remote water holes, spaced more than 2 kilometers apart, then played back different recordings through the night. Lions growling at each other, gunshots, dogs barking, and ordinary human voices speaking Songa, Northern Sotho English, and Afrikaans, all at a normal conversational volume. Then they recorded how 19 different mammal species reacted, night after night over 6 weeks during the dry season, when every animal in the park depends on those same water holes to survive. The results, published in the journal Current Biology, were almost embarrassing for the lion's reputation as Africa's top predator. Animals were twice as likely to flee at the sound of a human voice than at the sound of a lion. They abandoned the water hole 40% faster when they heard us talking. Nearly 95% of every species tested, including elephants, giraffes, hyenas, and leopards, ran harder from human conversation than from Africa's most feared carnivore. Zanet's co-author on that study was Craig Packer, one of the most respected lion researchers alive, a man who has spent decades studying exactly how lions hunt and think. Even he called the size of that gap startling. But here's where it gets stranger. This fear isn't really about volume, or aggression, or anything a human is actually doing. It's about unfamiliarity. Predator researchers have a name for it: neophobia, a built-in caution toward anything new or unreadable in the environment. A meta-analytic review of predator behavior, led by biologist Adam Crane, found that carnivores across many different species, from foxes to mountain lions, treat novel and unpredictable stimuli with far more suspicion than threats they already understand. A lion has an entire evolutionary playbook for hunting a zebra. It knows the zebra's speed, its escape routes, exactly where its weak points are. A sleeping human breaks that playbook completely. We don't smell like normal prey. We don't move like normal prey, and we never have. A species that has survived by judging risk correctly in half a second treats that kind of uncertainty as a reason to walk away, not a reason to attack. This shows up outside of Africa too. A large-scale study on coyotes, published in Scientific Reports, tracked how the animals responded to unfamiliar objects and scents across both urban and rural landscapes in North America. Every single coyote in the study showed some degree of neophobia, that same hesitation toward the unknown, regardless of where it lived. The rural coyotes were even more cautious than the urban ones, largely because bold, curious individuals in rural areas tend to get shot or trapped, which quietly removes that trait from the population over time. Caution toward the unfamiliar isn't a personality quirk. It's something that gets selected for, generation after generation, because the animals that ignore it don't usually survive long enough to pass on their genes. There's a second layer to this, and it comes from research led by Neil Carter, who studies human-wildlife conflict at the University of Michigan. His team reviewed data from 31 separate study sites, covering close to 40% of all remaining lion territory on the planet. At more than 2/3 of those sites, lions had actually shifted their hunting schedule to avoid humans, becoming far more active at night, specifically in areas dense with human presence. seconds. In other words, this isn't just a moment-by-moment reaction. Entire lion populations have quietly rearranged their daily lives around staying out of our way, giving up prime hunting hours just to avoid an encounter with something they can't fully read. Here's the part that changes everything, though. That instinct isn't unbreakable, and when it fails, the results are horrifying enough that they became one of the most infamous predator attacks in recorded history. In 1898, 2 lions near Tsavo, Kenya began pulling railway workers out of their tents at night, one man at a time, while their campmates lay just a few feet away, unable to do anything but listen. British officer John Henry Patterson eventually hunted both lions down after 9 terrifying months. His original account claimed 135 dead. A 2009 isotope analysis of the lion's bones and fur, carried out by researchers connected to Chicago's Field Museum, revised that number down to around 35. Still a staggering toll for 2 animals. What makes Tsavo different isn't that the lions suddenly stopped fearing humans. It's that every protective factor collapsed at once. The workers were living in flimsy, exposed tents with no real barrier between them and the bush. A severe drought that year had gutted the local prey population, and later analysis suggested at least one of the 2 lions was dealing with serious dental disease, including a broken canine and an abscess, the kind of injury that would make chasing fast, healthy prey painful, maybe impossible. Sleeping humans, stationary and unprotected, became the only meal that didn't hurt to catch. That's the part mainstream nature content tends to skip. It was never that predators are simply incapable of attacking sleeping humans. It's that the specific conditions which normally protect us, unfamiliarity, healthy alternative prey, and some kind of barrier or fire, all have to fail at the same time before that ancient hesitation finally breaks. And that hesitation didn't build itself by accident. Long before tents or rifles existed, our ancestors were already working out how to engineer their way past this exact vulnerability. At Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, researchers led by Leora Kolska-Horwitz at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem recently found burned bone fragments deep inside the cave, in deposits dating back as far as 1.79 million years. That's evidence of hominins, most likely early Homo erectus, carrying fire in from wildfires outside and keeping it burning inside their shelter long before humans could make fire on demand for themselves. That fire wasn't for cooking yet, and it wasn't something they knew how to create on their own. Just keeping it alive once they got it inside took real planning for a species that hadn't mastered fire itself. All of that effort served one purpose: turning the most vulnerable hours of the day into something survivable. You're still doing a version of that every single night, even if you've never once thought about it that way. The locked door, the porch light left on, the phone screen glowing on the nightstand while you fall asleep. All of it is the same instinct our ancestors carried a million years ago, just wearing modern clothing. We are still, every single night, trying to convince the dark that we aren't worth the risk. So the next time you fall asleep in a tent, or even in your own bed with the window cracked open, think about what's actually happening in that silence. It isn't that nothing is out there. It's that something calculated the risk of you and walked away. For close to 2 million years, staying alive at night hasn't been about being the strongest thing in the dark. It's been about being the thing predators have learned over and over not to bother with. If you want more of these deep dives into the science hiding behind things that feel completely ordinary, stick around.